Let's talk about the events that led to the final demise of the once booming Sikh empire. Hi, I'm Misha.
And I'm Arij, and welcome to Tarihi Tales. In this series, we're going to be talking about the Sikh empire and how it came into being and how it eventually fell. So in our previous video, we kind of talked about the successors of Raja Ranjit Singh and how one by one, how each successor came into place and fell off. And eventually, we're left with only one, and that is Prince Duleep Singh, the 5-year-old boy. And so let's see what happened with him and what eventually led to what we know now as the fall of the Sikh Empire.
So Duleep Singh was crowned Maharaja in 1843 after the death of Sher Singh. Now, because the Maharaja was only 5 years old at that time, his mother Maharani Jind Kaur actually ruled in his stead, and his uncle Jawahar Singh was made the Prime Minister. However, it soon became widely known that Jawahar Singh was misusing his power. He even ended up killing one of Ranjit Singh's son, Peshawara Singh, just to secure the throne for his nephew, and obviously power for himself. Now, obviously the Sikh army or the Khalsa army wasn't blind to what was going on. They were watching each and every step, and they saw how he was stepping so out of line. Due to the constant shift in successorship, the army basically wasn't under Maharani Jind Kaur's control, because they actually sided with Sher Singh, and now they wanted to side with Peshawara Singh, but Jawahar Singh got him killed. So the army was looking at what was happening, and they decided that something needs to be done about this Prime Minister because he's way out of bounds. So there was a meeting that took place among the generals of the army, and they summoned Jawahar Singh. Now, Jawahar Singh kind of got a hunch as to what's going on because, he knew what he was up to. He knew the army was watching. And he thought that if he took the Maharaja along with him, army wouldn't dare do anything to him then. So he basically made the Maharaja Duleep Singh ride on the same elephant as himself, thinking this would save him, but it didn't though. The army actually got him off of the elephant. The Maharani was also in an elephant right behind Jawahar Singh, and she saw this whole thing through her hoda, which is basically like a palanquin on top of the elephant. And they got him down the throne. Duleep Singh was right next to him. The little boy had to witness this murder. The army shot him and then slayed him. The Maharani, of course, at this point was scared for her own life, because if this can happen to her brother, who's the Prime Minister, it could also happen to her. So she didn't really do anything, or she couldn't do anything to stop it.
Okay, so because of these events, it becomes apparent that let alone Duleep Singh, even Maharani didn't have that much power in court, and the situation was getting real dire. So what she does is essentially take the Khalsa army and she sets them up near the banks of the river Sutlej, where the British are kind of like establishing their encampment, and they're getting a little too close for comfort. Now, here comes one of the most interesting parts in the story, and the problem with most history, most armies, and most battles, that is essentially traitors. And before we get into details, you just have to remember 3 names, because they're going to be very important. That is Gulab Singh, Tej Singh, and Lal Singh. And essentially what the Maharani didn't know when she was sending her army out, she assumed all of them were loyal. But Tej Singh and Lal Singh had already, at this point, sold themselves off to the British. And now we can kind of begin with where this started. And we'll go first with Lal Singh, who wrote this letter to Captain Peter Nicholson, who was, I believe, the assistant agent to Firozpur. And this is what he wrote in the letter, and I'll quote, "I have crossed with the Sikh army. You know my friendship with the British. Tell me what to do now." And he essentially waited for Nicholson's reply, which came back as, "Do not attack Firozpur, halt as many days as you can, and then march towards the Governor General." And that is literally what Lal Singh does. He follows exactly what Nicholson tells him to do. And now we're going to get into some interesting bits of what could have happened have we not kind of like looked at it through this lens. And we see this through a person named John M. Ludlow, who basically states the whole thing and how it would have played out if the Sikh had actually attacked Firozpur that day, like the Maharani had told them to do. In Firozpur, the British only had 8,000 troops, and the Sikh army had 60,000. And essentially, he mentions that this would have been a crushing defeat to the British. And the next British encampment after this, where they were planning to attack, also had 8,000 men. So essentially, the Sikh army could have kind of wiped them through and have a very definitive victory But that did not happen because of Lal Singh. And this is what Ludlow writes. He says, "So utterly unprepared were we that even the treachery of one of our enemies scarcely sufficed to save us." And according to another source, Colonel Mutton of the Sikh service says, "This treason saved the British from a sure defeat."
If you think this was bad, wait till you hear what Lal Singh did next. So obviously he didn't attack Firozpur, but instead he took his army to Mudki on 18 December 1845. So in Mudki, he basically orders the troops to attack, and then himself he turns around and he leaves, leaving the entire army leaderless and fighting a battle with an enemy that already knew they were coming. So he just set them up for, an utter defeat. What's funny is that even after this treachery, the British actually faced heavy losses by the hand of the Sikhs. They're very shocked by this, and genuinely displeased that even with all of this, they are facing losses. And this only happened because there were a handful of the leaders in the Sikh army, even now, that were actually loyal to the crown and that did wanted to put up a brave front. One such brave Sardar was actually called Ranjot Singh. He crossed a part of the river Sutlej with the flank of his army and burned part of the British Ludhiana cantonment. And this basically kind of, made the British very angry that he's lit up the cantonment. And he was eventually defeated by Sir Harry Smith in the Battle of Aliwal. But now we come to the real deal. The final battle that defeated the Sikhs happened on 10th February 1846 at Sabran. I don't know if I'm saying this right, but that's the name of the place. Okay. Now what's interesting is that how and why was it the Sikhs ended up losing this battle? Here again we see the comeback of the characters Adij mentioned earlier, but this time we see more action from Tej Singh and Gulab Singh. These two made an agreement with the British in the first week of February, and on the 10th of February, that's where the plan started to go into effect. Now, there is a man called Joseph Davy Cunningham. At this time, he was a political agent in the state of Bhavalpur when this Anglo-Sikh war had broken out. So he's an eyewitness to everything that's happening, and he's of high enough rank that he has information as to the major decisions that the leaders are taking in the British camp. A few years after this war, he actually comes out with a book, and it's called A History of the Sikhs. And in this book is where he actually tells us what really went down in the shadows of this battle and how exactly was it that the British won. This book actually ended up taking his career away from him. He was actually fired, but we'll make another little video about that. What's important here is to actually know what he told us in the book, right? So he says that the British gave very, very clear instructions to these traitors as to what to do and when to do it. And this is what they told them. This is from his book, that the Sikh army should be attacked by the English and that when beaten, it should be openly abandoned by its own government. Further, the passage of the Sutlej should be unopposed and the road to the capital laid open to the victor. Under such circumstances of discreet policy and shameless treason was the Battle of Sabran fought. So we also know that Lal Singh at this point had made sure to send the British the exact battle plan of the Sikh army as well as the location and other vital information through his emissaries. Now here comes the third traitor, Gulab Singh Dogra. He took another route. He basically started to inflict some kind of a psychological warfare on his own army, where he started cutting rations and started cutting vital supplies to the Sikh army itself. It became so bad that this army from this very rich land, the people were being fed carrots or gram flour. And what happened was that, as we mentioned earlier, obviously where there were some traitors, there were some people who were very, very loyal to the army, and the layman soldiers, they were ready to give up their lives for this. So some soldiers actually went back to the palace and they went and had a meeting with Maharani Jind Kaur. They told her that this is what's going on. The army is short on supplies, we're short on food, it's kind of chaos, what's going on? Can you help us out? The Maharani was in disbelief. She didn't believe them. She thought that these, group of soldiers, they're just lying and they just want more money out of her. So it's alleged that Maharani Jind Kaur at this point took off her gold bangles, threw them at those people and said, you know what, maybe I should take your swords and go and fight in the battle for the Maharaja myself. So had she only listened, God knows what could have happened. But then this army, this flank of the army, went back and nothing changed.
Okay, so when the battle actually started, although there was like a lot of confusion going on, as Misha mentioned, there was miscommunication within the army, but still it had really amazing fighters like Shams Singh Atariwala, who put up a very brave front, but eventually because of all the things that were happening around him, he passed away in that battle. And because of what all the traitors had provided to the British, they eventually won. And we see this through the behavior of Tej Singh, who literally blew up the bridge that the Sikh army were on and killed thousands of his countrymen. And essentially that was a crushing kind of blow in that battle for the Sikhs, and the British won. The British crossed the Sutlej River on the night of February 10th to 11th, and as promised, no one hindered them and they continued onward. They took possession of Lahore on 20th February and essentially ordered that the little Maharajah Duleep Singh be brought to their camps, and it kind of played out in this way, where they were essentially presenting the Maharaja as legitimate, but still mocking him with the things they were kind of demanding of them to do. He was brought into camp on the demands of General Henry Harding, and General Henry's son actually writes that the Maharaja looked really scared when all of this was happening, because we have to keep in mind he's a kid. He was hardly a boy of 8 years old, and he clung desperately to Duleep Singh, not knowing what that person had done. The Maharaja was then given gifts by the British and was kind of pressured and told that this treaty needed to be signed, this treaty of peace among the British and the Sikh Empire. And essentially this treaty would come to be known as the Treaty of Lahore, which kind of put into place Maharaja Duleep Singh as a puppet ruler and legitimized all of the interventions and the things the British carried out. According to the treaty, Kashmir had to be sold off to pay for the war. And guess who ended up buying Kashmir? Duleep Singh, the guy who had cut the rations of the Sikh army to help the British army. He even ended up buying the estate from the money he had stolen from the Lahore treasury. So he essentially bought Kashmir with the Maharaja's own money. So basically he was also a thief, not just a traitor. And then a schism began to occur. I'm not laughing. And a schism began to occur in between the traitors, because Lal Singh then went off to say that this was unfair and Kashmir had to be given to him as well, and he deserved it as well. So it may seem that everything is kind of working out for Duleep Singh and Lal Singh, but we also have to remember that if you're a traitor and the person you're working with, they also kind of realize that you don't have any integrity in terms of loyalty, and they're going to treat you that way. And that's a whole other story, but just a snippet. Essentially, Lal Singh was kind of tried later on by the British, confirmed guilty, and then he was exiled to British territories and all of his lands and possessions were seized. So essentially, he doesn't really meet that good of an end at all.
Okay, so coming back to the Lahore Treaty. Now, Kashmir is basically sold off to Duleep Singh Dogra. Everything from the river Bance to the river Sutlej is to be annexed by the British. And as for the rest of the empire, the British basically say that it's going to be under a council of regency led by the British resident Sir Henry Lawrence. So basically that also means that the rest of the kingdom is also under the British, but they don't want to say so outright. Duleep Singh at this point was just obviously a puppet ruler, and he actually became a showpiece for the European audience because there were some portraits and stuff of him which were sent to Europe and whatnot. Now, at this point, the British said that the treaty would only be in effect until Maharajah Duleep Singh becomes of age, which would be 16 years of age. But obviously, the British being British, they decided that no, they wanted more power. More specifically, they wanted the resident British to have unlimited power. And how they got around to doing that, because whenever the British kind of take power in these areas of the subcontinent, they want to legitimize the power so that nobody can claim that this was a wrong step. But obviously, we've seen the methodology for the legitimization is always something to do with treason or pressure. That's how it always has been. So in this case, they bring together all the Sikh Sardars and they ask them that, okay, are you willing to give the British regent complete power? And the Sardars are then given guarantees that your Jagirs or your lands, which are very important to them because that's their source of income, that's where they're earning from, Those lands will not be taken away and we'll make sure that they're protected. Now, having this guarantee and at the same time having the memory of Lal Singh, who Areej mentioned, the traitor that the British eventually actually exiled to British territories and found him guilty on some charges. So that memory was fresh in the minds of these Sardars. They were quite scared, so they obviously agreed and they were like, take all the power, leave us with our lands. Okay, now a new treaty was drafted. Now this is called the Treaty of Bhairawal. This was signed on 16 December 1846. Now the British decide it's time to reward the third traitor, Tej Singh, and they decided to make him Raja of Sialkot. There was going to be a whole ceremony where Duleep Singh was asked to kind of place the saffron mark on his forehead, kind of symbolizing that he's okay with this, he's on board, and okay, it's legitimate again. So what happened was that right before the ceremony, Maharani Jind Kaur actually told her son to outright refuse to do this, right? And since he was only a little boy, he listened to his mother, and at the time of the ceremony, he refused to mark Tej Singh's forehead. The British were obviously outraged by this. They couldn't believe that the little Maharaja would do something so daring. So now Sir Henry Lawrence, the British resident, decides that something needs to be done about this little Maharaja and this Maharani of his, the mother Maharani Jind Kaur. And the thing is about the story of Duleep Singh and the Sikh Empire, up to this point in history, this is a very straightforward story, something that's happened also in past with other empires, that, people are, there are battles, somebody takes something, somebody loses something. But it was from this point onwards that the story takes a whole new turn.
We'll be sharing more about what becomes of the young Maharaja and how he goes from the Prince of Punjab to the Black Prince of Perthshire in Britain.
So stay tuned and subscribe to the Tales. Let us know what you think about this series so far in the comments below. Bye!